I have the pleasure of introducing our first guest speaker. So Morris Miselowski, who, as Martin mentioned, some of you may have seen 4 years ago in the West Coast. So Morris is a business futurist. So he, in line with our conference theme, he's going to talk about technological changes that are going to help us navigate the future. So I'd like to welcome up Morris.
On a fairly sombre note, as I ask you all to bow your heads, in this most incredible thing that's happened around the planet, where Justin Bieber's Instagram account has been taken down. Surely there's no reason for you to laugh about that. 4 years ago when we met, I was trying to convince you all that social media was actually something that was going to stay on the planet. That unlike acting was not going to disappear on the pimply faces of teenagers. And here we are talking about a worldwide, monumental, trending event as we speak. Something as dramatic as Justin Bieber deciding as he stomps his feet and his hair flies across his face that he shall no longer talk to the hordes of people unless they learn to worship at his feet. That's the world that we're living in now. It's quite extraordinary. It's extraordinary not because of what he's doing, but the fact that in New Zealand, as we stand here, we're afflicted by knowing it. The world is so transparent. The world is so connected that this inane piece of information that I could have truly gone for my entire life without knowing now makes me tremble at the thought of what might happen to all those believers. But we'll take that on board afterwards. The reality is that as we stand here today, we are already in the future. We met 4 years ago. We talked about social media. We talked about that terrible thing called augmented reality. We laid some seeds for what was going to happen, and we've come back in a way to check on ourselves to see, in fact, whether it has happened, and more importantly, to continue our journey. I want to take you all this afternoon a couple of years forward from now. For some, it might be a couple of moments. For most people, it will be a year, 2 years, and we're going to have a look at the way the world is likely to evolve over the next 5 to 10 years with a personal view of how that might impact tourism, events and hospitality. I want us to have a look at this material, not as a sure bet. As we said 4 years ago, if it was a sure bet, we would all be standing here buying my tax tickets or getting my horse numbers. That's not what we're about today. We're really about looking at the outliers. We're looking at the things that are most likely to happen. And then it's up to you and I to make it real if we want to. Really what you and I are trying to effect is this. We're trying to increase our visitor numbers. And as you see across the planet, travel is one of those increasingly important activities across the world. There's this really interesting phenomena about calorie intake and tourism that is happening across the planet. The more calories that a country is able to give its residents, the more that they increase their self-worth, their ability, their work, and eventually their desire to move away from where they currently are, temporarily, to travel the planet. And we're seeing that in China, we're seeing it in India, we're seeing it across many countries. It's a fascinating way to look at the way that the world will evolve. But you and I, when it comes down to it, we really want to make that chart sing. We want to put more numbers on it than we currently have. What we have is an industry that worldwide accounts for much of the employment. We're looking at 6% of the total world's exports. We're looking currently at about 1.087 million international travellers, and we're looking by 2030 to have 1.8 billion, with a B, international travellers. It's quite extraordinary how we are going to see the advancement of tourism on this planet, not only as the existing population that is used to travel continues to do so, but as we bring on an entirely new crew, as we've already alluded to and you will throughout this conference, of middle-class people that will have, if they don't yet have, the burning ambition and desire to travel. There are some really interesting, wacky and out there predictions of what 2030 might look like. And 2030 is not that far away. For anybody of my vintage, that's closer than the year 2000. It's extraordinarily close when we think about it. And you and I are here to figure out how we might impact, how we might change it. Some of the things you see here may be a part of it. I actually think very few of them will be. But let's come to have a look at what might be ahead for us. One of the things that I know that you will have heard, because I'm constantly barraged by is this notion that the world is ever-changing, that innovation is just everywhere, nothing seems to be standing still. And the reality is very much in this chart, and this goes back to the foundation of business. What you're looking at here is S&P 500, Fortune 500 out of America. It's a list which tells us of the mighty corporations on this planet and charts them back to their initial existence of this chart, which goes back to about 1955. When a company entered this hallowed hall, they were quite likely to remain on this list for 55 years. They had 55 years to stuff it up royally, 55 years to make decisions, 55 years to get things right, lots of conversations down the track. And that was the way that the world was. It was certainly the way that the world was when I started my practice. What we're seeing now is a world that no longer thinks like this. We're seeing a world, instead of looking at the S&P, now counts unicorns. Unicorns. Quite incredible. Those pink mythological animals with a horn that our children might have once played with are now the thing that sends venture capitalists, angel investors and business titans to their knees as they cry and worship at their feet. A business unicorn is a company that's reached $0 to $1 billion, that's with a B, $1 billion capitalisation within 3 years and prior to it listing or doing something on the mass market. $1 billion. And in this space, we have seen many tourism providers. We've seen the Airbnbs, we've seen Expedia. We've seen many of those companies that even 4 years ago, we were trying to brush away with a broom, hoping that they would not come to reality, not come to marketplace fruition. This unicorn club understands that its existence is short-term, it's temporary. What it does is relevant to today, but they know there's no 55-year journey. They know more likely the journey is only a few years ahead. And that's the reason there seems to be such volatility in company, in this, what's happening in the business landscape and what you and I are experiencing. It is because companies now know they have a much shorter race to run. They go from 0 to $1 billion, literally, in the space of a blink of an eye. That's the landscape that you and I are working behind. What we also have, and this has marched dramatically in the 4 years since we last met, is a world that now fully embraces the notion that we have physical asset, but we also have digital asset. That a lot of what we do online is now still very much a part of the business that we have in control. This is one of my most favourite charts. It's one that I use in many industries. I'll give you a URL at the end of this presentation. I promise it'll be able to take you back to all of these charts you'll be able to review and have a look at them in more detail. So please feel free to come back to it as you'll be able to over the next months and have a better look. But this chart talks about a number of industries and it uses a colour coding system. Where it's red, it talks about a particular process or activity within that system, within that industry that is very human-centric. Where it is wildly green, it talks about an industry that is able to do that task or that activity in a digital space. If you can do that activity in a digital space, that changes the entire structure of a business and that task. It means that you can do it from anywhere, anyone can do it any time of the day. This is the chart that underpins where business is headed, what industries are currently looking at a digital world and becoming part of that unicorn club, and which still have some of the journey to go. The closest ally we have in this is entertainment and recreation. And you can see for good reason we still have a lot of red. There's still much of this industry, the allied industries around us, that are still very human-centric and will remain so for the next while. But we shouldn't rest on our laurels, as I'll show you in a couple of moments. This industry, in many ways, is now moving towards a digital space. Of course, that's not the physical asset. Of course, we're not going to put this place into the digital world. Or are we? And that's what we'll have a look at today as well. What we're seeing is this reality that where once like-minded companies, like-minded businesses would have taken on another like-minded business. And the reality is they would have taken on the entire industry. What happens now in this tech startup space, what's happening in this unicorn club, in this digitised new world, is instead of saying that I want to be a tour operator with a broad brushstroke approach to it, somebody sitting in their tracksuit, in their lounge room, or in their garage at home, comes up with a brilliant idea, usually with one of these in their hands somewhere. And that brilliant idea to their parents and to me seems like another idea for them to be lazy and for them not to want to go and find a job. But in the hands of them and their friends, it becomes this incredible business that takes on just one particular element of an industry and changes it forever. And this is what's happening into every industry. It's happening in banking, it's happening in motor, and it's happening in travel. What you see here are just some of the industries, some of the businesses that have been around for only a matter of years, that look at a single focus, offer a single set of activities for an industry, for a player. I would love you to go back into your environments after the conference, of course, is next week, and when you have a few moments, and I would implore you to take those moments to make use of what you're about to do over the next few days, is to come back to this chart and to ask you and the people around you to explore some of those brands. Literally just do a Google search on them and see what it is that's brought them to this notoriety. What have they invented? What do they offer to the industry? Importantly, how did they go about it? What was the thought process? What was the structure? How did they go about funding it? There are incredible lessons to be learned in looking at that map in far more detail. And I ask you to come back again with that URL I'll give you at the end of the presentation to do that and to explore what's happening. It's a fascinating insight to see how this and other industries are beginning to evolve. You also have the notion of a similar activity happening around the hotel space, where once a hotel such as this would have had to have provided and looked after everything. They might have had logistics partners, of course, Sabre or somebody else. They might have worked with airlines. But when it came to this property, they were totally in control, had to have all the resources, had to own and do everything themselves. What we find now is increasingly a world of collaboration with these sorts of companies that are offering specialist insight, specialist services, just for whatever their niches that they've created, that can then play into the tourism area. Again, a great place to be able to come back and have a look at. Something as simple as hotel bookings. And my greatest example is when we first started talking, even a few years before, TripAdvisor was never going to be part of the industry. That horrible word, in fact, saying it was a swear word. I mean, literally. I got hounded down off the stage in tourism in Hobart, because I suggested that really we need to get over it. We need to learn to play nicely with them. Those same people, in the space of 3 or 4 years, now proudly put up that TripAdvisor 4-star, 5-star rating at the front of their hotel. That's how far we've come, how quickly. And these companies are the equivalent of that. What we're seeing, in one of the ways that I like to track what's coming ahead and how likely an industry or a particular set of activities are likely to come about, is to look at the money. And what you have there is a chart of exactly that. This is a recent chart, only the last few weeks, which shows the investment in tech finance around travel. And you can see the growth area. We had a huge spike around the end of last year, and it's now coming back up. What I can tell you is that 18 months from now, we will begin to see where the money has gone. It takes about that long for the money to flush through, the business to grow, the products to be seen, and for it to become marketplace presence. So we're starting to see a lot of money being put in by venture capitalists, angel investors around the globe. What that tells me is that there are people that see this industry as a very, very good investment and are putting, again with a B, billions of dollars into companies, the likes of which we've seen in the previous slides, to ensure that they have a place in it and that they are making a return on their investment. So that's the business background. That's the world as we see it now. It's volatile because it's shorter. Lots of people are now investing. Rather than having to be the same or to come from within an industry, we're seeing many people outside of the industry ponder about what they might be able to do to take on that industry. And with various machinations, they're able then to put up a specialist product, a specialist service, and often that becomes a stalwart within an industry. In the background of the future, we also see an incredible rise in population. We're currently at 7 billion. By the time we get to 2050, we will be at 9 billion. I think we'll be over 9 billion, around 9.3 billion people on the planet. Extraordinary in 30 years. What we're seeing is a change to New Zealand. Have a look at 1950, where we had what's called the traditional pyramid of ageing, where lots of people between 0 and 4, which is the blue and red at the bottom, at the top there, and you then saw fewer and fewer people of that age range, and that's the way that most of us have seen the world. You come through the year 2000, You move across the year 2030 and see how that pyramid's flattening out. See how there are not as many people in the younger age ranges. We're starting to see more and more people in your population moving towards mid-age and moving into what would now be termed, and shan't be termed that for much longer, old age. And when we get to 2060, look at the difference there. Look at how many people will live beyond the age of 90. How that pyramid changes. And that's your local domestic marketplace. So the demographics around the world, especially around our region, mirror this almost exactly. Australia is the same. We're seeing kind of similar in China. Japan has already hit some of the 2060 milestones that we won't have for about 20 or 30 years. So our population is very much ageing. What we're seeing is this reality, that we will have at the moment about 12% of people over the age of 60 on the planet. By the time we get to 2050, 21%, or I think closer to 1 in 4 people on this planet will be over the age of 60. It's an incredible space, one that most people are still taking for granted. When I talk to audiences, what I'm finding is that they lump all people over 50, especially all people over 60, into one group. And they tend to look at them in a very unique way, as if they are homogenous, as if they are all the same. And we need to learn to change that, because I think one of our greatest markets moving forward is in fact in this age range of 50 and 60 plus. What we see for the first time ever in humanity, in our entire existence, is that right now, alive and living, we have 6 generations. And by the time we get to 2030, we will have 7 generations alive and living. That's 6 generations of people that are coming into your resorts, your hotels. Can you imagine 6 generations trying to decide on a single trip or a single activity? But that's what's happening right now. And you know full well that even when we talk about 3 or 4-year-olds, 2-year-olds, Pester Power has a lot to say. The 90-year-old that once might have been quiet no longer is. She or he has a lot to say in that decision as well. This marketplace is really quite untapped and quite misunderstood. This is the world that we're going to see, the change from 2040 to 2015, as we move through population of travellers on our planet. And you can see across the board that we have an increase of people moving right across our globe that are 60 years plus. It's quite extraordinary. And today there are things that we can begin to do to make our products more prescient to this marketplace. I refer to this set as the platinum set. They are the baby boomers. They grew up with the proverbial silver spoon. They have always had employment. They have always known some sort of money in their pocket. They have lived in a world where all things were possible, where they could create and have. If you think that they're going to age any differently, then you are in for a huge surprise. This marketplace of 50 and 60 plus are going to age disgracefully. I have no intention at all of being taken from this earth until I've done so. The reality is that this opens up all sorts of opportunities. I'm a firm believer that we will have much multi-generational travel. With my building clients, my large developers, we are already putting show homes on site that cater to multi-generational homes, that allow 2 or 3 generations to live together for an extended period of time. We're doing this with most of my clients now, a nod towards it. And I know that you will have seen evidence of this already. But you will see far more of this multi-generational travel come about. We will also see more travel for genealogical reasons. Do you recognise anyone in that? There's me. That's me and my big sister. That's at our family home in Włocławek. No one's been there. In Poland. So no, ask me about that. That was an interesting story. But we went back, we travelled back to find out where we were and where our parents were. And what you're looking at there is the front doorstep of the home that my parents lived in when they got married. And in fact, the home that my sister was born in and left when she was 4 months old, that no one had been to in almost 70 years till we went back there. Genealogical travel is a huge growth area as people of my vintage begin to reminisce and think about what the old country and the old dark might look like. It's a huge growth area. Also this soft adventure space that I love. You know, I have no intention to bungee jumping, but I would love to have that adrenaline rush. I would love to have that feel, that ability to be able to be out and to be doing something that gives me a similar type effect. Soft adventure is definitely something that the over 50, over 60 set and beyond are looking for. And again, this is a perfect destination for that. Slow travel is another phenomenon that I'm seeing now. We've had a lot of these short weekends. I think we'll see more of them. But this notion of taking a depth of time, of taking a week, a month, of actually seeing and exploring, of living locally. And a lot of this was actually charged off by Airbnb. That thought that I really want to immerse myself in the place and the culture is definitely another horizon landscape. And the bucket list. The bucket list are the things that I have left to do that I want to do and I'm willing to spend money on. And there is much money in this sector, in this age range for them to do it. All of these are wonderful cues. I talk about these with other industries as well as ways that we can approach a new marketplace or perhaps to fracture or segment a marketplace that we're currently in contact with. There is also, of course, the growing health and wellness phase. The reality is that we will live to 100 or 120. I firmly believe that people of my vintage will live to 100. My children, if I don't get to them first, will be 120. And my grandkids, of which I have none as far as I'm aware as of an hour ago, will live to 150 and do that routinely. We will, and we have already begun to take far better care of ourselves as human beings, as individuals, and we are willing to spend money on it. Medical tourism is such a growth area into many regions. It's one of the things that I've talked about quite a lot in the last 6 months. In fact, had a media request for it only a week ago. And that's a huge space, again, that I think that you can play so well in, and I know already do.
If you work in marketing, you better start upping your game.
Because you haven't seen anything like us yet. In just 10 years from now, we'll be buying and influencing buying in ways that will confound you. We won't just watch your ads, we'll expect smart, tailored content based on our social graphs. Tailored for me,
And
me.
We want to interact with it as we watch it, not just with touch.
With voice, gesture.
With intent. You better embed everything that is featured with additional information, social APIs, and e-commerce functionality.
And we mean everything.
Everything. The car,
The skirt,
the hotel,
the app.
Because we expect to double tap on anything to get more information.
Don't worry. You'll not save the costs by on-selling any leads to those data aggregator type companies.
We'll spread it through our networks and co-create with you.
and when we do buy, there are normally more of us than there are of you. You can change your business in one trade, as long as the deal is on. Augmented reality will be the new reality.
AR apps will almost function like special skills to help us navigate reality more effectively.
You wait and see what the iPhone of 2021 looks like. The clue is in the name.
And you better get used to paying us.
Our browsing, influencing and purchasing data.
We'll make some of us pretty rich.
But don't overstep the mark, otherwise we'll block you.
Mass blocks kill brands overnight and keep you up all night. So if you work in marketing,
You better start upping your game.
because you haven't seen anything like us yet.
Welcome to the future, full of precocious little brats. At this stage, somebody's willing to swing a bat at them. But the reality is that we baby boomers created them. We gave them a world of entitlement. We gave them a world where things were possible. And what they have really is a world that is being built on that. They have an additional world, a world that many of us did not even imagine would come true, and that's the digital space. For them, there is no geographical boundary. There are no time zones. For them, everything is possible. Everything can be innovated and invented. For them, in that previous chart where we saw red being a human activity, they sit again in their tracksuits with one of these and wonder why they can't take on the world. The way that they see the world is an incredible gift, and one that I think we need to take on. There is much that we can do to temper it. But I think to look at the world with a childlike curiosity is one of the most incredible things you can do as a futurist. We also have the realities we've said that they will live to 100, 120. They will work until they're 90 or 100. Not in the 9-to-5 notion that we currently do, but the notion of having to earn some income. They will most probably have a long stay in the workforce, but their travel needs will also be quite different. We already have volunteer tourism riding up on the planet. And we will see more and more of that as social philanthropy is a backbone of these generations, wanting to give back, wanting to experience, and not to do it by money, but to do it by toil and to do it by sweat. We also are beginning to see much more of this mystery travel, going to places that are unusual, discovering, off the beaten track, things and places where people haven't been. And again, if ever there was a place for them to do that, it's right here where we sit. We also are moving into a space where educational travel is on the increase. Everybody going to university now expects to do a gap year. Everybody in university expects to travel for a semester. It's a quite ordinary expectation. We're beginning to see that travelling for education goes back to the late 1800s and early 1900s of the well-to-do, who sent their children away for a discovery tour of Europe for a year. We're coming back to that notion, not for the year and not to Europe, but allowing our children to expand their minds by physically moving themselves to a different space and experiencing what that space has to offer. The reality is that these generations will have 6 careers and 14 jobs. They will work into their 80s and 90s. They will work project and task, not 9 to 5. Their holidays will no longer be dictated by just 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever is stated in some award. Of course, for some that will always be the case, but there will be a growing cohort that will be able to move in and out of spaces, take vacations, travel, perhaps for business, and take a day either side, and that is what one of the growing phenomena is. I think one of the areas that we're going to see more growth in is extended stays. People that want to experience that much longer opportunity than just coming and going. And there are a number of properties and providers that are doing that. This is One Fine Stay, which is kind of like an Airbnb. It's an Accor product bought by them, I think, a couple of years ago. It offers a different level of stay experience. Normally a more upmarket apartment, a much pricier price tag, something around the $1,400 in New York to stay somewhere quite central. But it's that notion of staying longer for extended stays. And this is the one that tickles my fancy the most, and I'm beginning to see evidence of. I can't quite chart and quite can't put evidence to it yet. But I see a lot of people, and maybe because that's the space that I work in, that are travelling and working simultaneously. Yes, it might be because their job requires them to do that, but increasingly people are just tethered to a keyboard, and that keyboard can be anywhere on the planet. They're choosing exotic and different spaces to work from, and that's a growing phenomenon. I think that what would be interesting is to offer a product that allows people to work together. Instead of just staying in a hotel, is actually to have a common workspace, a common community around it. This is something called We Work, which is a community of people that gets together for the purpose of working together in a collaborative space. They come and go for an hour or two, share resources, do whatever they want and meet. But they have a We Stay opportunity, which in the same building offers 3 or 4 floors, depending on the building, where people can have a room, a quite upmarket room, but there's nothing else there. There is then a communal space, which again is very upmarket. It has all the ability and all the space for you to be able to cook, to get together with your friends, to meet people and work together should you want to. These spaces, I think, are going to be one of the boons for many properties as they begin to look at how they can reshape and remanufacture what they currently have to offer it to a new audience, to give you the opportunity to work from there as well as then to go on and do what the other things that they might want to. The reality of tourism being digital, of being online, is really not a new one. For those of my vintage, and we were talking about this last night, I remember back to the old telex operator in the early 80s, late 70s. We have always needed something that will allow us to stretch across the globe to make bookings, inquiries and reservations with. And this is a chart of technology that goes back a long way. And I can tell you I've written pretty much all of this, and at pretty much every one of those dots, there's been a lot of pushback. The industry is about to go to hell in a handbasket. And now we can't live without them. They've become so ordinary. What we also have in New Zealand now is a huge uptake, again no surprise, of technology users, of people that are connected. This is very different to the chart we looked at 4 years ago. It is now quite entrenched, quite ordinary. So what we're seeing is a backbone of technology being provided, technology being used, and we see that people are beginning to find satisfaction in the online experience, where once we thought maybe we are giving them a second-hand opportunity, a second-hand contact, many people, depending on where they are and what stage they're at, are seeing the online presence as sufficient for what they need to do. The red arrows are the ones which are closest allied to our industry. So we're talking airlines and hotels. I lament the fact, though, that we are still that far down, that we are not at the left-hand side, we're not at the top of the opportunities. Can you imagine that personal banking is the thing that people are most satisfied with online? Surely we can do better than bankers. What's happening around this space and what's happening around technology, and this is the thing that's going to drive all of the work that you and I do for the next few years, is that our technology has actually moved into a very, very new landscape. It's moved into a landscape where it no longer bothers about just finding information, it actually curates information specific to you. It anticipates your needs ahead of you even knowing it, and gives you information on your screen that you might not otherwise have come across. And we will all experience that when we're looking at our Google Maps and other things, where all of a sudden on the screen there's this bit of information that we have no idea how it knew we wanted to know. But it's actually quite handy to have found that out. And that's this anticipatory world that our technology is moving in. Despite all the technology that we're about to have a look at, despite this very fluid, dynamic, changing world, despite the multi-generations and the new generations and all this new thinking that we seem to have on this planet, all the things that are now shifting and reshaping this industry, I have the fundamental belief that we are actually devolving as human beings. The Industrial Revolution, which is 200 years old, taught us to live, to recreate, to have, to want, to travel in a particular mode. It taught us that we had to work 9 to 5, that our vacations and holidays were structured. They were on a weekend or they were in an allotted period of time. It taught us that retirement was mandated at 65. It gave us our habits and our beliefs. It told us about what was important. And for many of us, told us, especially in New Zealand and Australia, that it was England that we had to travel to first, the motherland, to experience that. That was what society, Industrial Revolution, did. We now find a very, very different space opening, where we are devolving. We're stripping away from all of those things that were once mandated and all ordinary. And we're coming back to being very, very human. I believe that technology has in fact removed the shackles of all of that and has allowed us to come back and to go back to the core of what it is to be a human being. And I want to show you how I work through that. I kind of have this conversation in 3 levels. The first thing is really about information. Much of our world up until 20 years ago was about you and I being able to assemble and amass information. The person that had the most information was the person that won. So as a travel agent or somebody involved in this industry, you would sit with somebody, you would have copious amounts of books, you'd have tariff cards, you'd have all kinds of things. And it would be up to you to be able to put all that information together and make sense of it for a traveller. Never, never would a traveller ever think of doing it by themselves. It was foreign territory, almost another language. In fact, it wasn't another language. The reality was that information was king then, and much of what we provided could be fairly routine. We could offer information in a guidebook and people would follow it because that was the best sum total of knowledge that was available, and we were attuned to accepting that and not going off the beaten path. So we literally had paths, we literally had signs, everything that we did was mandated, everybody jumped through the same hoops when they had their travel experience, give or take. What we know now is that because of this online space, that you and I are drowning in information. There is so much information out there that when we think we've made the right decision about destination, when we think we've learned something about a hotel we're about to book, some bugger comes along and writes a review. Something comes up with a new picture. There's something that we didn't see 10 seconds ago that all of a sudden darts us off in a different direction. That's where we are at the moment. Not at a guidebook that's fixed, that was 3 years old when we bought it, and still we hold to be true and dear. We now look for millisecond information, and that's the world of information. You and I cannot cope with that. And as providers, we really can't be responsible for putting the information in that space. We can for curating it. We can for making sure its authenticity is correct, that its comment is correct. But it is beyond us now. The gate is bolted. The gate is gone. What we're seeing now are retail travel agents like this one, which is Virgin in London, that allows people to come in. It's a very holistic experience. It has iPads and allows them to use all their smartphones and equipment. They can literally brush information from their iPads onto the big screens. They can watch huge screens of the destination they're about to travel to. They can see the hotel room they're about to book. So it's not an immersive experience yet. But it is a very, very large experience. And the reality of this is to provide information that once would have been zeros and ones. Yes, we can get you on that flight. Yes, this is the hotel that you might want to do. This is the tour that you might want to go on. We can now say to them, experience this, have a look at this, do this. And they can make a choice based on what they see and what they experience. So we are actually getting inside of information now. Information is coming to us in a very different sense. This is for Leslie. This is 4 years ago I showed you a magic mirror for those that were around. This year, thankfully, they did it on cue perfectly. Westfield, London, has gotten together with the Sanderson Hotel. And if you stay in their Grand Poobah suite, which would mean, of course, that you could afford to do this without all the gimmickry, you have in your bathroom a mirror that turns into a magic mirror that ties you back to Westfield, London, and a personal shopper. And a personal shopper will dress and undress you virtually in your bathroom mirror with the clothes that she thinks would suit you for a particular event or set of activities you're about to undertake, and then will deliver it to your suite within about 2 hours, sooner if you need it. This is right now, literally happening as we speak. This is information coming to us in a very different sense. What we're seeing are, again, a number of hotels that are offering shopping experiences because they understand that the traveller has come, she or he no longer wants to take huge suitcases. They might be going to an event, to an opera, to the theatre. They just want to dress differently. They want to find something cultural about this place that they want to take home with them. Personal shoppers are now very much a part of the landscape of high-end hotels. Like a concierge, these are specific to the shopping experience. Again, I think an untapped marketplace and one that's going to burgeon. Because yes, we could discover it online, but it's so much more joyful when we talk to a person about this and she or he shares their local knowledge and understanding of shopping. It's something I know that my wife would incredibly enjoy. In fact, when we were in Shanghai 4 weeks ago, we hired somebody for a couple of hours that I thought was going to do a usual Shanghai tour, that we ended up talking about shopping and buying stuff in shops, not tourism shops, off the beaten track. What we're seeing is, again, this reality of information, no longer in zeros and ones, coming to us through headsets that you'll hear more about tomorrow. Virtual and augmented reality that we touched on briefly 4 years ago has just made a huge splash on the global scene, literally in the last few months. Augmented reality is a headset that you put on. It takes the existing world, overlays information. Virtual reality makes the existing world disappears and takes you to another world inside that space. Mixed reality, which is the big push forward, does a bit of both, depending on what's appropriate at whatever time and whatever information you want. But these are ways that we are now going to experience information that you're going to provide. We also have these incredible experiences. This allows you, through this site, allows you to go on a trek to the top of Mount Everest. It is not something I could physically ever undertake, but virtually, it's an incredible experience. This is not a cheap gimmick either, by the way. This is a fully escorted, immersive digital tour. And I believe that we will see far more of them down the track. One of my big careers that I talk about moving forward is a virtual travel agent, like the holodeck from Star Trek, where yes, we want them to physically come to this space and enjoy it. But there are a group of people that will be just as satisfied, for whatever reason, and we can argue the good and bad, and I hope we do at dinner tonight, who are just as happy to jump into a headset and experience for an hour or two what this wonderful country has to offer. And around these tables, I firmly believe in the next 5 years will be people that do exactly that never physically bring a person to this wonderful space, but digitally bring millions and perhaps billions of people to experience what is available. If you think that's a shortcut, if you think that's going to detract from your industry, the world and time has shown us the exact opposite to be true. Once people have a virtual experience and they have enjoyed it, they then want the physical. They want to then go and feel and touch it. It's a wonderful entree to those that at first hand may not want to come, who after doing this cannot wait any longer to get on the plane. What we're seeing, if you think that is not true, and I hope none of you even know what this is, but I'm sure all of you do, is this stupidity that went from 0 to 100 of Pokemon Virtual. I first found out about it when I got off the plane from Shanghai and Hong Kong. My producer in Hong Kong rang me to ask me if I'd do a segment on it. It just literally blown up in Hong Kong and I then did, I think, 15 segments in the space of a day, incredibly talking about this silly little thing, which has been around for quite a while, not Pokemon Go, but the ability to do this. And this has huge tourism implications. It is the next guide. It allows people to experience the space and the place in ways that they've not done before, and you have taken it on. This is not something that you were immune to. There are wonderful examples of the tourism industry, the travel industry, taking this phenomenon on board, which thankfully is waning at the moment and coming back to some semblance of normality. Taking it on board as a heralding for what might be able to be done in these virtual augmented spaces. For many of you, this might be a step too far, but can I ask you to think back to 4 years ago when you said social media was a step too far, when you thought augmented reality was never going to happen except perhaps in my office. That we're now seeing evidence of both of those things being very much a part of this industry, and an industry that sees potential in it. This is where we are today. What we're seeing again, if we follow the investment, look at how that has spiked. Q1 2016, the investment in augmented reality and virtual reality is literally stellar. If you can prove to venture capitalists that you even have the inkling of an idea, then you better have a check account that can take a couple of zeros with a couple of ones before it. It is phenomenal at the moment. What this means is that the days of transactions are gone. And thankfully no one in this room still carries on that way. But I know many in travel that do, many tourism operators, many hotel operators that still see all of this as transactions, zeros and ones. None of us, putting on our other hats as human beings, want to be considered in that way. The days where it was just enough to be able to book somebody, get them into their room, give them what they want, give them the experience of being able to spend a day or 2 days, take them on that tour that was set and that was sufficient, are long gone. And I hope they were never here, but unfortunately I know they were. Today, it is all about experiences. That's what people talk about. They talk about the experience they had while they waited in the queue to get on a ride or an activity. They talk about the experience they had in the hotel or the experience they had in the restaurant. That's the lingua that we use nowadays, and that's why we move on to the next level of activity. What's happening around us as we speak, literally over the last year and for the next year or two, is that we have moved out of a world of information. We have all decided that we no longer want to remember phone numbers. All of that's inside the internet. Everything you and I need to decide on travel, to make travel happen, all of that is available online. Let's just leave it in there as a library that you and I can tap into. The problem is that library gets ever deeper. We're never quite sure what we need because we're not quite sure what's there. And as human beings, we are always inquisitive. We always want to know what we didn't know. We've all done this, and if you haven't, I'm the only one. We're about to hit the button on a travel experience, about to book that flight, or that hotel, or that tour, and all of a sudden up comes, as I said, that other review. Whoops, better give that another thought. What we're seeing now is the technology, the machines you and I have in our pockets, these devices are now beginning to do some of the heavy lifting, some of the thinking for us. They're sifting through all of that information ongoing and bringing us what's relevant. Not only is it sifting through the information other people are putting up into this space, it is also now sifting through things that you and I carry with us. In this industry, this is one of the most incredible technology gifts that I have seen, and we are not yet making good use of it. People now carry a device that announces them into a space. It tells you that they are here. It tells you who they are and what they want. It gives you information about their travel history, their experiences, what sort of activity they want to undertake. And they are providing that simply by having this device in their pocket, by having some kind of a wristband, some kind of a whatever they want to wear on them. And this is a huge growth area. Many of us as consumers are now wearing and using this information. This is the next extension, where the information from the generic gets mixed in with the information from the individual, because she or he provides it by wearing this information, by wearing these devices ongoing. Not only is that coming together, but we are moving into this space called the Internet of Things, where all of our assets, all of our activities, all of our properties are beginning to be connected. Now, for our buildings, that's quite ordinary. Many of you will have buildings already that you can monitor, that you can intervene with, you can change air conditioning, you know when there's an issue or a concern. But what we're going to see, and what we're just beginning to lay the foundations for, is an infrastructure that sits across homes, suburbs, cities, countries and planets, that literally allows anything to orchestrate something else. When you drive up to your home, your garage door opens, your lights turn on. When you walk up to a hotel, instead of having to go to the reservation, it automatically knows who you are, automatically does that transaction and takes you to your room and has that room ready for you. This Internet of Things is going to change the logistics of how you and I offer many of the opportunities that we do. I hear from you rightly that many of our activities, many of the spaces that visitors go to are crowded. The 1 o'clock Queenstown, for instance, is an extremely busy time. With these devices, we will be able to divert people dynamically away from the 1 o'clock to the 11 o'clock, to the 2 o'clock. We will be able to orchestrate all of that seamlessly without humans being involved, but with technology understanding how best to use an asset and what's referred to in the trade as sweating that asset, which means to get the most out of it, to give people that experience that they want without feeling overcrowded. This is something that we as humans are now beginning to accept. Many of us now use Google Maps and allow it to tell us which direction to go in. We are now using apps when we go to Disneyland and other places to allow it to queue for us and tell us when to come and do things. These are not extraordinary thoughts, and they sit in the realm of what I call the selfish gene, which is not negative. It makes my life easier. I'm willing to trade off a bit of information with you if you can do that for me. We're starting to see already that New Zealand is actually way ahead of most other countries in accepting the reality of this sort of interaction. That what we're seeing is that the banks themselves now believe that by the time we get to 2020, 80% of all banking transactions will be done through one of these devices. Simply one of these devices that understands you, what you want, and what the banking experience is, and offers it to you. So we are not a long way away from this. We have this notion also then of this new world of technology that knows who you are, knows what you want, knows what it should be serving you. And for many that then goes into this Arnold Schwarzenegger thing of the robots. I'm forever hearing how robots are about to take over the planet, how you and I will sit, which may be a boon to this industry. We will have that 4 or 5 day vacation every week when we have to do nothing because technology will do it for us. I've heard this for 35 years, I've never seen evidence of it. I doubt I will in my lifetime. What we're seeing instead are the rise of what are machines that are doing work for us. Drones have come into our space, and again, part of this industry. Part of an ability to give people an experience they might not otherwise have been able to have, to see sights, to be able to adventure. This is a chart that shows you already the size of this industry. And this industry has only yet begun to take hold. It is something that you will make more use of down the track, if you're not already. We're seeing autonomous vehicles, which is something you'll talk more about in later stages of this conference. By 2025, 1 in 4 cars sold will be capable of driving themselves. Ford made an announcement yesterday that by 2020 they wanted to have their first autonomous car available for sale. Volvo already has one. Audi has one. There are many on the road that are possibly capable of it. But what it means is that people will now, in 2025, 2030, no longer have to drive themselves. They will be able to be taken to a region, to a space, into a place, simply by climbing into a car, it knowing where it needs to go, how to get there and what to do along the way. This may seem like Jetsons, it may seem like a long way off, but I give you my analogy of the year 2000, being further away than when this will become a reality. I will make you a rolled gold guarantee now that when this becomes part of our landscape in a broader human sense, it will change for the better the way this industry operates. For the better meaning that the people that come in to use the services that you provide will be able to have a far richer and deeper experience along the path as well. What we're seeing are robots in hotels, like the Henna Hotel, that has animatronics as a way of being a receptionist, and offers porters that are robots that will carry your bag to your room. We're seeing this as part of what is very much a niche activity at this stage still. We're seeing Connie come to life at the Hilton. She started work last December, and she's able to speak 15 languages, and along with her 5 human concierge mates, to answer questions about where's the best steak, where should I go, how do I find things. So she's one way that you can interact. We're seeing the same thing at KFC and at Pizza Hut. This is in the Shanghai KFC in the convention centre. We're seeing that these robots, as gimmicky as they are now, their children and grandchildren will be less gimmicky and more a part of what we do. I'm not for a moment saying that they are going to take over the world, but they will be the tools that you and I will use to be able to allow people to have the experiences they want. And as we speak right now, chatbots are the biggest thing that are exploding in technology. A chatbot is an online conversation. It's what you and I might have done when we couldn't find something, we chatted away to that person at the bottom of the screen, and she or he answered us, and it was a typing conversation that we had. These chatbots have now taken on a life of their own. We're seeing them being used in all kinds of spaces. This is one of my favourite ones. A 19-year-old has put together a chatbot that is able to dispute parking fines and has won about 70% of all cases. He has now gone on to look for ways to dispute airline travel and is moving into homelessness. And this is a chatbot, no human involved. We're seeing it being used by Pizza Hut that allows you in mid-conversation in Twitter to be able to interact with a server and to book and order your pizza for delivery to your home. We're seeing IBM Watson, which is one of the greater providers of the technology behind chatbots, working with Macy's, again very recently, to offer a shopping experience. First port of call, if you want to know whether we have something in store, whether we have your size, if there's something we can do that's fairly routine, talk to a chatbot. If that doesn't work, then it escalates up to a human being. We're beginning to see that these sorts of figures, which again is a chart of only 2 months, is the prediction for how these chatbots, which are pieces of software buried into websites, buried into apps and other spaces, will begin to take away work from humans. And the work it will take away are the routine. What time does the tour leave? What do I need to bring with me? What are the conditions today? The routine questions that you want to answer, that you know you should answer, but don't necessarily have the person power to do it, will be done by chatbots routinely. And people are quite accepting, or will be, of that happening. We're beginning to see these sorts of activities literally right now. Booking.com offering a personalised itinerary. If you book through their app, when you go to a destination, it will continue to feed you information about where you are and what you might like to do and where you might like to eat. Other things, again, a personalised itinerary just for you. We're beginning to see this again with KLM, who is not only using it for boarding passes, but is using it for customer service, which seems a natural extension. You already have them online, you already have interaction with them. So you can go beyond just that to being able to interact with one of their operators. We're starting to see it in Expedia and Priceline. These are all very, very recent, the last month. There is a huge deluge of large companies moving into the chatbot space. We're seeing Hipmunk also going into this space. It will allow you to go online to look for various travel, airline experiences, prices, and also to include Hipmunk in that search, who will go out and further search for you. And again, if you want to follow the money, look at how much activity is being done in chatbots as we speak. How thin the investment was even a year ago. How thick it is already today. So what we have is this notion of, I think, devolution, where we're seeing online now is really the technological tool. It is the backdrop. It is the backdrop that allows us as humans to continue to do what we want. It allows us to share resource and to make it available on a global scale, anywhere, anytime. You're seeing Amazon, that great online provider, now realising that some of their service is far better in a physical environment, and they are opening up over the next year 400 retail bookstores that will use all of the back end of Amazon, all of the smarts of what Amazon does, but will offer it to you in a physical sense because they know that people still want to talk to people. Technology sits behind. It does the important heavy lifting. It makes sure that the experience we want to deliver, we can deliver. And it puts people in front of that to be able to have the conversation. And that's where I think that we are headed. That's why this industry is not one that's going to be overrun by technology, but we must allow it to continue behind the scenes for the logistics, behind the scenes to offer that seamless activity that you and I always want to do. My creed lately is anything that's not digital is gold. And that's what we need to remember, that you and I are still very much in this gold phase, that what we offer is a human contact, a human service. Technology is for answers. It absolutely is. But people are for questions. And that's where you and I come into this. We must continue to offer a service that allows people to interact with other people. It brings us back to this notion of what I refer to as artisanal wisdom of old, where what we're looking for is somebody that knows that area so well, that gives us an experience that's so personalised, it's so exact to who we are and the way we like to travel and the information that we want to know and the experience that we want to have, that we can't possibly understand how they haven't been a lifelong friend forever. That's the Holy Grail. And I believe technology will be able to allow us to do that for each and every one of our customers. It's called human marketing. That's my phrase for it. And that's where we need to head. All of the stuff we've talked about is imperative. You must get the back end working. You must understand technology and chatbots and understand what it can do for you. And where it cannot, where it's not purposeful, move on. But please never forget human technology. Let's not get caught up in this. As we move through the new ages, through the new stages, as people evolve past this work mentality of 9 to 5, travel and leisure will forever be a part of tomorrow's landscape. We will be doing more of it than ever before, but it will be triggered by different experiences, and we will want to have different activities and different times at every point that we go. The other thing I think that's really important is something I've only begun to realise in the last year or so, and that is that many, many people do not know how to travel. It seems strange, but they don't. Especially the burgeoning middle class. We talked about China, or you heard about China coming. They are unfamiliar travellers. In having an experience with them at the first point, of thanking them for the booking, of telling them what clothes to bring, of giving them a packing list, of giving them instructions, of really working through all of that, and then post afterwards, sending them information, I think is all imperative in our work. It's not just the physical. We need to teach them how to travel, so that when they come to us, they are ready for the experience. Please don't assume they know how to do it, because they don't. What we're looking for is that frictionless opportunity, which is what you and I as consumers want. We don't want there to be any road bumps. We don't want to be caught in some catastrophe of tickets not being ready, or somebody not quite understanding, or a reservation not being found. Nobody wants that. We want that frictionless experience, and that's what you and I strive to do every day. Really, for me, innovation is about this. It's about this three-legged race that we run, that it's uneven, it's messy, but it requires us to work together, and that's why we come together every year, why you sit together in this room now. It is so that we can do this together. But this is our reality, that alone it is very difficult. Together we can make it possible. And to me, innovation is pottery. It's like pottery. We have an idea in our head of what we want to create, but we should never be so fixed as that wheel turns that we don't allow the creativity of what we're doing to guide what might be a different path, maybe a better path. As we mould it, as we change it, we might find something that's more appreciative, better to where we're headed. What I'm saying by that is that innovation is fluid. It will never come to a point where you put a full stop to the end of that sentence. When you think you have your product so finely tuned, so appreciated, the marketplace is applauding, your reservations are at 200%, you need to continue to innovate. Because to rest on your laurels brings us back to the first point of our conversation. The world is dynamic. People are changing forever their habits and their desires and their wants. Technology is forever changing the boundaries of what can be done. We must always keep ahead. That's the reality of today's business. The question you need to ask yourself is really not whether I innovate, but what's the risk of not innovating? What's the risk of saying, I don't have time, I don't have resources, I'm far too busy? Which is what I hear from many operators. I understand the pragmatism of it. But can I tell you, as a consumer, I don't care. I'll go to somebody else who has made the time, who has made the effort, who can engage with me in the way I want to. That may be a harsh lesson, but it is what is happening. There is no get-out-of-jail card free anymore. We must find a way to overcome this. And I don't offer an easy solution because there isn't one. But we're not in business because it's easy as much as we want to. We're in business because we love providing that end result, that service. It really is about doing incremental changes, small things every day, every time we interact with somebody, asking, was that the best way that we can do it? If not, innovating it the next time. And also looking for incremental, the big changes that we might have ahead. The reality is that tomorrow we will have an industry. It will be one of the largest industries in the world. I believe it will be one of the largest employers. It will be something that most people on this planet, middle class and above, will want to have and those below will aspire to. So there is no issue in this industry shrinking. The question is, how do we take the challenge up to what is already available? The presentation you've seen is available at that URL. I'd love you to go back to plagiarise, come back and have a look at some of the slides. If you wanted to, take some strategy out of it by looking at some of the unbundling ones and taking them apart. I give you permission to slander me. It's quite possible that you might want to go back and tell your people, this madman said this, what do you think about it? And I say that because I love that conversation, so blame me to get them to do the thinking for you, so you don't have to take the heat. But the reality is, we come to these days for the camaraderie, we come to learn from each other, but we come because we know that as good as we are, as great as our product is, as wonderful as what we do might be, that tomorrow we're still looking for a better version of ourselves. Thank you for the gift of your friendship, for the ability to come back 4 years later and reprise the future for you and to stare and ponder about what it is that might be ahead for us. I want to wish you every success on that journey. I look forward to seeing what it is you make of tomorrow's landscape and of course selfishly enjoying every moment of it. I wish you an incredible conference and most importantly look forward to seeing each and every one of you again in the very near future.